coming back here to just another kind of random image. This is still the pons with the basilar artery lying right on top of it. And the cerebellum, the gyrus and the folia are much smaller, so we can usually make out the difference here between the cerebellum and just look at the cortex out here in the hemisphere. So this is still the cerebellum. And lying above the cerebellum, of course, we have the occipital lobe right here and the temporal lobe. Okay, so we look always for these blood vessels here, basilar, but also the internal carotid arteries. And up higher, we'll want to be able to distinguish the middle and the anterior cerebral arteries. Okay, which we can right here. Now this is the midbrain, so here's the cerebral peduncle. And so flowing blood on MRI, remember it looks black. And so the blood vessel wrapping around the cerebral peduncle here is the posterior cerebral artery. And the basilar artery goes up all the way to the midbrain, and then it terminates as the posterior cerebral arteries, which wrap around the cerebral peduncle and eventually are headed back to supply the occipital lobe back here. Okay, the other thing we can see here is the optic nerve coming in right here and over here. So we have optic nerve, chiasm, and optic tract that are seen here on this side. Okay, so this is a dark area here. So this is a blood vessel. The internal carotids are gone. They've broken off into the middle and anterior cerebral arteries. So this is the middle cerebral artery. And remember, it's very tortuous. It goes up and down. So we just do one section through it with an MRI. We only get bits and pieces of it here and over here. And here we just see a little dot in the middle cerebral artery here and over here. Okay, so remember that the most medial part of the temporal lobe, which lies right next to the cerebral peduncle, is the uncus. Okay, so this is the uncus, and we've said the uncus compresses here on the third nerve if we have uncal herniation. So the third nerve comes out here in the interpeduncular fossa, and so that relationship with the uncus is real important. As we get higher up, there just aren't a lot of pathways and structures to point out. Of course, we have the lateral ventricles, and we have the corpus callosum here, the splenium and body, and then back here we have the splenium of the corpus callosum, which interconnects the occipital lobes. Hard for me not to tell you about what that does clinically because it's so interesting. But anyway, next year. And here we see the caudate nucleus, right here. So a nucleus bulging into the lateral ventricle has to be the caudate nucleus. Here and over here. All right, so a blood vessel here along the midline, we see a dark area here, 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 here. This has to be anterior cerebral artery. The midline blood vessel looping up along the midline. Remember, going back to supply the paracentral lobule, among other things. So this is the anterior cerebral artery.